We've covered the patch itself, so you know exactly what comes next. We're going to be covering our best Korean builds for patch 10.9. Some of these breathe life into old champions or just kinda change around new ones. Make sure you smash that like button, destroy the sub button, and let's jump right in. The first champion we're going to be covering is somebody who got hit pretty hard with nerfs on the last patch. That has caused a big change in his build. Let's talk about Aphelios. The top Korean players are still taking Flash Heal with the odd Flash Cleanse here and there when it makes sense. So for the most part, just take Flash Heal and you'll be fine. After that, for runes, you're still taking Conqueror, Presence of Mind, Bloodline, Coup de Grace, Nimbus Cloak, and Gathering Storm with attack speed, adaptive, and armor in your minor runes, unless you're going up against a mage bot lane, in which case MR makes more sense. Now I did kind of gloss over it, but it's not all the same. Presence of Mind is a different rune. Aphelios used to take Overheal, and if not Overheal, Triumph. The difference here is the difference in the build and it requiring Presence of Mind to really feel good. Aphelios no longer rushes Essence Reaver. Instead, you rush Infinity Edge. You just need the damage to take advantage of the fact that you need more in the early game to work with. Remember, the nerfs to Aphelios really hit him hard in the early game. This whole build has evolved from that because he needed something else to work with in order to make it past the early stages of the game and actually scale into the later parts, even if it's slightly weaker and made him change his build up. I should definitely clarify that slightly weaker really means that he has a harder time against tanks. Aphelios is still absolutely nutty against other AD carries and squishy champions. After you pick up your IE first, make sure you grab your Berserker Greaves for the mobility and attack speed, and then get a Renan's Hurricane. After that, Phantom Dancer is going to be great for the shielding and mobility that it gives you, and after that, Mortar Reminder for the armor penetration that you now need as you no longer have it in your kit. Then lastly, Mercurial Scimitar is an amazing last item, but if you don't need the QSS effect and the magic resist, then Death Stance is a better option. With Aphelios neatly wrapped up and packed away, let's move on to Irelia, as she has been a champion who's been getting a lot of interesting innovation lately. Between changes to her main rune of Conqueror, some of the changes to the precision runes like Presence of Mind, as well as buffs to items like Blade of the Ruin King, Titanic Hydra, and Ravenous Hydra have all had Irelia ping-ponging between item builds for a while now. But we've finally seen something settle. And keep in mind that this works for both mid lane and top lane. For runes, the definite best rune is Conqueror. It's an obvious choice unless you don't have any fight where you ever cast more than 4 abilities, and that rarely happens, let's be real here. From there, grab your Triumph, and then Bloodline, Coup de Grace, Biscuit Delivery, and Time Warp Tonic with attack speed, adaptive, and armor or MR depending on your lane matchup. And that's definitely pretty standard, but the item build is anything but that. You're going to want to rush Blade of the Ruin King, and then grab a Wit's End and a Black Cleaver, all as fast as you can. If you feel like you need boots, either for Merc Treads with the Tenacity, or the Tabbies for the auto attack and armor reduction, then great, go for them in the middle before you get a Wit's End, let's say. However, if you don't, those items all are amazing power spikes for her, as well as following that up with a Titanic and then finishing everything out with Asterix. Every time you complete one of either Blade of the Ruin King, Wit's End, and Black Cleaver, you're gonna notice that you just become an absolute monster. Your dueling potential and 1v2 potential is crazy as long as you manage to avoid CC. And let's be real, Irelia is pretty mobile with her Q and all of her abilities available to her, so you can definitely do it. The real synergy of the build is the Blade of the Ruin on-hit applying on your Q, as well as shredding people normally with your basic attacks. And then you combine that with the on-hit magic damage from Wit's End to have a sort of damage diversification, and then nobody can really build against you properly. If they build armor, you could still outlast them because your sustain is fixed from Wit's End and you still have some lifesteal from Blade of the Ruin King, and you also still do magic damage from Wit's End. If they build magic resist, well then you're just gonna destroy them with all of your normal abilities that do physical damage and all of your auto attacks. And once you get to the later 5th and 6th items of the build, you're just augmenting your burst by having an extra Titanic Hydra rotation in there, as well as making it easier for you to play in minion waves because of the splash damage. And then of course, Sterix is an amazing defensive item, and you have tons of health from Sterix, Titanic, and Black Cleaver. For the third champion that you're going to need to abuse that's been really prevalent in high elo Korea, we're going to go over Ahri. And this one's going to be real fast because this is a build that has existed before. But when I say every single Ahri player that we managed to look at was using this build every single game almost, we mean it. Let me say this again. If you're playing Ahri, you should use this build, guys. For runes on Ahri, you're going to want to take Glacial Augment with Magical Footwear, Biscuits, Cosmic Insight, and then Cheap Shot and Ultimate Hunter. You might get baited here thinking that you would really want the Ingenious Hunter for the item cooldown reduction, but no. Ultimate Hunter is actually way more important because Ahri needs her ulti for playmaking, and that is why these runes are so important, because the swap from Ingenious Hunter to Ultimate Hunter makes all the difference in your playmaking ability. And then of course in the minor runes, go double adaptive with magic resist or armor depending on your matchup. Oh yeah, and since you are a Foxy Assassin, make sure you take Flash Ignite, as they are your key summoner spells for making aggressive plays in the early game even before you get your ulti. As far as the build goes, there shouldn't be too many surprises here. You're going to want to go GLP first item and then grab Lucidity Boots. Sorc Shoes aren't actually that important on Ahri, as a lot of her damage is true damage from her Q, and her magic penetration won't be that amazing anyways. Then grab your Spooky Ghosts and then a Morellos with a Rabadons and a Liandry's to round everything out so that you can have as much annoying CC and damage as you possibly can. Next up on the list is a champion who got some seriously fat buffs, so let's talk about Kayn. With the Q cooldown change and the ability for it to affect minions, and also his W slow getting higher, it's looking pretty good for Kayn right now. And while you might think initially that these are big changes for Rost, it's actually also very good for Shadow Assassin Kayn. The W slow matters more for Shadow Assassin Kayn, as red form already has the knockup, and the Q cooldown is also very important for both forms, but specifically Shadow Assassin gets a lot out of it, because usually your rotation has you queuing on somebody with your special passive that does bonus damage, and then by the time you're coming out of your ultimate, you would be able to do it again if you have decent cooldown reduction and the buffs from this patch. This is all of course in the middle stages of the game, before you get the ability to basically two-shot any squishy champion and you basically don't need your Q anyways. At that point, it's used more for mobility than anything else most of the time. For runes on Kayn, you're going to want to grab Dark Harvest, Sudden Impact, Eyeball Collection, Relentless Hunter, Nimbus Cloak, and Gathering Storm, with double adaptive and armor in your minor runes, and of course Flash and Smite are the bread and butter summoner spells. You might notice that this is very much a blue Kayn build, as you are taking Dark Harvest, which is incredibly rare to see a red Kayn take. Almost every Kayn player that we've seen has been consistently playing blue Kayn more than red Kayn, so there must be a reason for that. As far as items go, you're going to want to grab a Stalking Warriors, as that is the best option for blue Kayn, as it can allow him to really get his ultimate off from larger range. Then Moby Boots are the go-to boots of choice that'll let you really speed around the map, farm camps very quickly, and make your ganks through walls really deadly. After that, Duskblade is very important because it has special synergy with your R for extra damage with synergy from the passive, and then on top of that you can grab yourself a Yumus for the lethality and the cooldown reduction boost. Then round out the build with the Edge of Night for defense and even more lethality, and a Black Cleaver to give yourself the max cooldown reduction with some extra mobility and health to get yourself out of bad situations. Keep in mind that blue Kayn plays very differently compared to red Kayn. You're not going to be the champion who steps up to the enemy tanks and bruisers all the time and expects to get out alive or do anything meaningful in the first place. And that's exactly what you need to understand ahead of time, and if you don't, then that probably means that you're not going into your games with a plan. And that is a big mistake, but it's the kind of mistake that we can help you fix at our website, GameLeap.com. We've got tons and tons of guides, all done by challenger level players on just about every topic that you can ever think of, and we're always expanding with more and better content so that we can keep giving you guys exactly what you need to improve. It could be a champion guide, or maybe a VOD review so that you learn how to teamfight on a specific champion, or maybe you're looking for macro tips in the top lane, maybe you need to learn wave manipulation, whatever it might be, it's gonna be there, and if I keep going, we're gonna be here for another year as I list off everything that we have. But now that you have exactly what you need in order to improve, let's get back to the champions and keep giving you more things for you to try out and abuse in your games. And the next one is something that we've actually covered in the past, and we're just gonna mention it again because this thing is absolutely smashing in high elo. Corki mid with a new build is absolutely bloodthirsty. You're going to want to take Fleet Footwork, Presence of Mind, Alacrity, Coup de Grace, Magical Footwear, and Biscuits with attack speed adaptive and armor or MR depending on your matchup. Flash Teleport should be your summoner spells of choice. And when you find yourself in the mid lane, do yourself a favor and just rush Armor Mana and then grab your Triforce with Sorc Shoes following that. Then go ahead and pick up that Infinity Edge to make yourself crit for ridiculous amounts of magic damage, and then Rapid Fire Cannon and Phantom Dancer to round out the build with extra crit, attack speed, and defensive stats that include range and a shield as well as movement speed. This build shreds through people like butter with a flamethrower. This is absolutely ridiculous, and if you don't have a hard lane and you don't need the sustain from Fleet Footwork, then go Lethal Tempo by all means. That's just better for damage. You do so much insane damage and have amazing mana sustain because of all the total mana that you get and the increase as well as the restoration from Presence of Mind, Muramana, and Triforce. It is absolutely ridiculous how much damage you do coming into a fight. Cast one ability, auto attack a squishy champion, and their health bar just deletes. You've got the attack speed, the crit, as well as the abilities to back everything up that you're buying. Just don't act like you're an amazing champion from level 1 because you're not. You definitely do take some time to get rolling and get your items, but once you're there, oh man, you can 1v9. But let's move on from the Gyrocopter pilot and on to Jace, because Jace has been in an interesting and pretty poor spot for a while now, but with a new build and new runes, he's been doing pretty well. High elo players have swapped away from a more bruiser playstyle on Jace, where they take Conqueror or other damage runes, and have swapped for more utility in Phase Rush. You're going to want to grab that Phase Rush in the sorcery tree with Mana Flow Band, Absolute Focus, Scorch, Magical Footwear, and Biscuits with double adaptive and armor or MR depending on your matchup. While this can work in both mid and top, it's definitely more effective in the top lane as you have more distances to cover with your Phase Rush movement speed. Oh yeah, and of course summoner spells should be Flash and Teleport unless you're mid lane in a really scary matchup, then Ignite could be exactly what you need to win that spooky matchup. For items, you just throw everything else out the window and say lethality is my best friend, because if a tank or a bruiser jumps on top of me, I am disengaging and sprinting with Yumu's plus Phase Rush plus all of my abilities that give me movement speed into the next dimension and out of Summoner's Rift. This is exactly why we see a lot of these Jace players actually don't finish their boots until like 4th item, which is crazy. But you're going to want to start with a Yumu's, then grab yourself a Duskblade, Black Cleaver, Edge of Night, and then finish it all out with that juicy Mortal Reminder to make sure that nobody has any armor left. You are built solely around damage. Your one purpose is to kill and then leave. And even if you can't kill somebody, if you blow a decent chunk out of their health bar, that's fine too, because you can just dip out of there and then do it again in 15 seconds when your Phase Rush is up again. And since we've talked about Jace going from anything but the sorcery tree into the sorcery tree for Phase Rush, let's talk about a champion who's basically only been in the sorcery tree and now is moving out. Anivia has seen a lot of mixing up on the Korean ladder, and right now players are taking Electrocute with Cheap Shot, Ghost Poro, Ravenous Hunter, Presence of Mind, and Coup de Grace, with double adaptive and armor or MR depending on their matchup. Even with all of this offensive burst, they still take Teleport almost every single time. They're not committing to something like Flash Ignite Anivia and going for a solo kill at level 2 or anything crazy like that. The reason why this build has evolved definitely has to do with the champions that are really popular in the mid lane right now. A lot of assassins as well as bruiser fighters who can manage to lane in mid like Renekton or Irelia, as well as the assassins like Fizz or Talon, are very prevalent right now in the mid lane, and Anivia wants every single edge that she can get in dealing with them in the early game before they become a problem. Every tiny little bit of damage counts, and the Electrocute combined with the Cheap Shot as well as the Adaptive Force from Ghost Poro, the healing from Ravenous Hunter and all that jazz, you get the idea, it all adds up. For the build though, nothing's really changed here, it's mostly the runes. You still want to rush that tier and then grab your Rod of Ages ASAP, and then upgrade your tier to Seraphs immediately afterwards. Then your Sword Shoes will come in handy after you hit that point, and Azanias for the defense, as well as the Golden Mode is always an amazing choice 3rd item. From there, Rabadons and then Liandry's will round out your build, as you don't really need a Void Staff because you can keep most people in place for 7 years anyways, and simply burn them to death as the Ice Bird. But now that the chilled chicken is done, let's talk about Lissandra. She did recently get buffs, and she's been doing pretty well on the Korean server for a little bit now. Add the buffs into the mix and you might have something very substantial there. The Koreans have taken a damage-oriented approach on a champion who's mostly been known for their CC more than anything else in the past. No Aftershock here, as they take Electrocute with Sudden Impact, Eyeball Collection, Relentless Hunter, Absolute Focus, and Gathering Storm with double adaptive and armor MR depending on your matchup. They also take Flash Teleport to make sure that they can get those nice roams in, because after all, they do still have that CC and can easily turn fights around. As far as the item build goes, you're gonna rush Lunins, none of that Proto Belt or anything else here. Then grab yourself a Sword Shoes, then Morellos, Zanyas, Rabadons, and Void Staff. This is a pretty standard damage mage build with a little bit of survivability thrown in there with the Zanyas as well as combined with your ultimate, and it really results in Lissandra hitting really hard, especially in the later stages of the game where she has so much CC between the slowing from her passive, the damage from her passive, her root from her W, the slow from her Q, all combined with the burn from Liandry's and the extra defense from the Zanyas as well as her ultimate. You could see why this champion could be a pretty big problem if she gets gets into a fight in the right way. But with that, that is all of the Korean builds that we have to cover for this patch. Whether you're interested in picking up a new champion, or learning something about macro, or learning something about a specific lane that you just love playing in, make sure you go check out our website, GameLeap.com. We have so many guides, all done by Challenger level players, and we don't stop there. We are always making more content so that we can keep giving you guys exactly what you need to improve and win in your games. You could start with the basics, or all the way down at the very nitty-gritty champion-specific VOD reviews and analysis so that you know exactly what you're doing at every single point in the game. And if you made it this far, thanks for watching the whole video. What do you guys think about this patch's Korean builds? Some of them are pretty hype and out of nowhere, but also we have some returning stuff like Phased Rush Jace from way too many seasons ago. Anyways, as always, my name is Ace Windstorm, and I will see you all later.
Just a humble bounty hunter, man.